Hello and welcome to this short video, Spirit Drinks. My name's Andy Bowles and I'm a food lawyer. Now this is number 20 in a series of 100 videos that I'm recording on UK food law topics. You may be watching this video as part of our online training service, in which case you'll have access to additional resources such as a webinar, an hour long, which goes into obviously a lot more detail on the topic. You can download the presentation, you can download additional materials so you can really read into the subject. But if you're watching me on YouTube here, then that's absolutely fine. So what is a spirit drink? I'm referring to alcoholic drinks that have an alcoholic content of more than 15% and have very specific what are known as organoleptic qualities. What I mean by that are taste, smell, and so forth. The regulations in this area are very much focused on preventing deceptive practices and protecting both the consumer and businesses involved in placing these sorts of products on the market. There is, I'm sure you're aware, lots of traditional products such as whiskies and gins and vodkas and brandies and products of that nature, which must achieve very clear standards set out in the regulations in order to use that terminology. But the regs are very much focused on protecting the consumer, so the consumer understands what they're buying and they're not being misled. So those are the two issues: protecting consumer from being misled, but also ensuring fair trading, fair competition. So the regulations are very liberal in nature. They don't prohibit any spirit drink. If you want to place a new spirit drink on the market, then as long as it's safe in accordance with general law and as long as it's labelled appropriately, then there's nothing to stop you. Of course, as I've said, most spirit drinks out there are of course well established, and so the regulations seek to protect the name so that people just can't come along, make up a new spirit drink and call it whisky. There are very strict standards that will apply to a drink that's going to be called whisky, or one that's going to be called vodka, or one gin, etc. Two elements to protect consumers. One is a sales denomination, which is basically the name under which a spirit drink is sold. So if you look at the regulations, it lists out the names of the various spirits. I've already mentioned a few: whiskey, vodka, gin. And under those names, there are criteria that must be met. If those criteria don't apply, in other words, the spirit drink that you're marketing doesn't fall within the scope of those particular definitions, then it should be marketed as spirit drink. There's also scope for geographical indications, so locations to be added to the spirit drink, because a lot of spirit drinks are of course linked to certain parts of the world, Scotch whisky or Irish whisky, for example. So the sales denomination is the name under which the spirit drink is sold. This is the legal name, so something like whisky, something like vodka. If you actually look at the regulations, then, I know behind me it's very small, you won't be able to read that, but that is the category of spirit drink known as rum, and there are some very clear criteria that need to be met if you're going to describe your spirit drink as rum. It's a definition. It says rum is a spirit drink produced exclusively by alcoholic fermentation and distillation, either from molasses or syrup produced in the manufacture of cane sugar, or from cane sugar juice itself and distilled at less than 90% volume, so that the distillate has the discernible specific organoleptic characteristics of rum. There we go. That's one definition of rum. There's another one, but I'm not going to run through that. So you have a definition, but you also have other compositional criteria. The minimum alcoholic strength of rum should be 37.5%. Rum shall not be flavoured. Rum may only contain added caramel to make the colour, and so forth. So for every spirit drink that's listed, whiskey, rum, gin, vodka, etc., there will be a set of criteria that must be achieved. If those criteria are not achieved, then the product cannot have the sales denomination of that category. So if, for example, I've decided to make my rum not from molasses or syrup produced in the manufacture of cane sugar, but I want to make it from sugar beet or something, then I can't use the term rum because it isn't rum. It has to be something that meets that characteristic. So sales denominations might be supplemented by geographical locations. Again, as long as this is not going to be misleading to the consumer. So some, of course, will have additional characteristics, that's Scotch whisky, for example. And there are, again, very protective measures in place for something that wants to be called Scotch whisky. Now, I've talked about deception, I've talked about misleading, and one phrase that's used within the regs is illusion. Now, illusion is the direct or indirect reference to one or more of the spirit drink categories. As I said, the categories would be things like rum, whiskey, gin. So, you have your sales denomination. We're going to place on the market a spirit drink, and it's going to be a vodka. As long as it meets the description, as I'm sure you're aware by now, I've said it enough times, then it can be called vodka. But what about if it isn't? What about if we're making it in a sort of, it looks a bit like vodka, it's colourless, smells a bit like vodka because of the way we're making it, but it isn't vodka because it doesn't meet the characteristics of the standard. Now, clearly, if we can't call it vodka, it'll have to be a spirit drink. But what about if we call ourselves, I don't know, the English Vodka Company? Now, by calling ourselves something like that, we're alluding to the fact that this is vodka. Although we're not using it in the name, there is something about it. Or if we, for example, put pictures that relate to the manufacturer of the food, or of the drink, sorry, or we're making other allusions on the label, indirect or direct references to this sort of product. And so it can get a bit obscure. I mean, you could have, traditional Tsar recipe, Russian recipe, spirit drink, vodka-like drink, or these are all allusions, if you like. So, allusions are prohibited by the regulations. I've come across quite a few of these in my time. Some of them are very straightforward, where businesses have tried to market spirit drinks on the back of one of the established categories. But remember, one of the objectives of this regulation is to protect businesses who are going through legitimate trade. You just don't want somebody coming in and making a drink in a cheaper way, maybe lower alcohol content, and trying to pass it off as being a spirit drink. Remember, these are high value products. There's lots of money to be made here. So protecting businesses is really key. That's one of the reasons we have the illusion restriction. But also, it's for the consumer who ends up buying something, because if you're in a supermarket or something, you might only have a few seconds to make a judgment on what you want to buy. If you have a product that's placed next to the vodkas and it's got the word vodka on it, you don't look at it that closely, it's got pictures of sort of Russian type symbols, then you might be tempted to think it is vodka because you haven't really given it your full attention. So again, to protect consumers, this whole illusion issue is about making sure that's not terms are not being used in a misleading way. So the labelling of spirit drinks, I have already sort of mentioned the fact that these products will need to be labelled with a sales denomination, the sales name, which is the legal name. But actually, normal food labelling rules will apply to the spirit drinks, except they are exempt from ingredients listing, minimum durability, and nutritional information. Okay, so there we are. That's just a quick trot round the spirit drinks regulation. That's just one out of 99 videos that I'm producing on UK food law topics. So please join me on the next one. Thank you very much for watching.